CEO Ronald Higley from Create the Difference. I want to talk to you some more about pin up and pin down and kind of what actually happens from a core standpoint, as well as some of the performance. So we're going to use some different cores here. We're going to do some different simulations and kind of show you a little bit more about what's actually going on with the core. So we watched a video called Pin Up versus Pin Down Doesn't Matter. You should probably check that out on our YouTube channel at Ronald Higley Jr. first, and that'll give you some background about what we're doing here. In that video, we actually laid the bowling ball out. The first bowling ball laid out was 5 by 45 by 30, as you can see over here. And we're actually going to use a core shape that is not the same, but is in the same kind of vein as the core shape that we used, that track latitude. And I want to explain to you, you'll see why or why it doesn't matter so much once we get going into the video. So I'm going to drill this ball. Just going to put some holes in it. And this is the pin up layout. So when you look at the ball, it looks just like it does in our video, and it's pin up. Now I want to turn it to the side because what I want you to notice is how the holes are actually impacting the core. So here you can see the finger holes kind of touch this portion of the core, and the thumb hole hits the side of the core. The other layout that we did, we changed the second angle to 75 degrees, and that was the only change that we made. When we did that, you can now see the ball is going to be pinned down and the holes have moved. Let me show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like in the video. It is a pin down layout. And just for a minute, take a look at how the core has been impacted by this change. So you can see the finger holes are now taking out this portion of the core. The thumb hole is taking out this portion of the core. Once again, we'll switch that back to 30 just so you can watch the fingers and thumb hole and see that there's a slight bit of difference in the mass removed when it's at 30 versus when it's at 75. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put it back to 30, which is our official pin-up layout. And we're going to go over here to a simulation that we did. And if you go check, this simulation kind of mimics exactly what happened with the bowling ball that we threw in the video, and the total hook is extremely close to at 18.02. We're going to focus on that. I want to show you some of these additional plots. When you drill the ball, put the holes in it, you can actually see the flare pattern, and you can see how the axis point moves across the ball. So this is the pin up layout. When we do the pin down layout, which is the 75, that'll change. So we're going to start by showing the simulation change. So the simulation change is 18.16 to start. When we put the holes in the ball, that goes to 18.97. So very similar. Once again, you can look at the other video and see that's similar to what happens. The ball hooks slightly more when it's in the pin down configuration. But you have to keep that in perspective, right? Because that's less than an inch different. The track flare changes as well. So the track flare, the migration path now goes toward the thumb. The track flare has gotten tighter like it did in our video, and it's actually closer to clipping that hole like it did in our video. So this is all pretty close. It's a very good representation of what actually happens when you drill these balls differently. And the benefit or importance of that is because now that we can kind of show you that we picked the core, we're getting similar type numbers from a simulation standpoint as in terms of how the ball rolled, and we're getting a simulation standpoint that's similar in terms of how the track flare pattern performs. We can begin to change the core, because one of the things that people said is like, well, that's because, you know, the core you used, this one has a flip block, the track latitude doesn't. It's because it's asymmetric versus symmetric, a lot of things. So we're going to be able to play around now with different cores and kind of look at the differences of those as well. So we'll go back to 30, and we're going to go grab probably my favorite core shape that I designed when I was at Ebony International, which would be the Hammer Black Widow, which is funny because that ball is still in production today. So that's pretty cool. It doesn't matter which one of these Black Widows we grab, they're all going to have the same core shape, and that's what we're most interested in, is the core shape and how it's impacted. So let's turn this around a little bit like so. We will drill it at 30 first. You can watch the mass removal. So you can see we hit the pancake, hit a little bit of the core, hit into the side of the core here, and I'll spin that around so you can see a little bit more. Okay. So that is our pinup layout on an asymmetric ball. This ball is asymmetric, by the way. So this would qualify under the asymmetric ball requirement if that was a concern for you. So let's take a look at the flare on that ball. Well, actually, let's do the simulation first and look at the total hook. So the total hook on this ball is going to be 19.07. The flare of the ball, a lot of flare. That migration path is still going toward the fingers. Okay. So now let's go make this 75. We'll watch how we hit the core. You can see here. So now we hit the pancake, still a little bit of the core here, and then the core on the top of the core as well with the pin down ball. So you can see that. Okay. So looking at some of the simulation, we were at 19.07 to start. We're going to hit this button and it will change it, and now we're at 20.04. So still, I mean, basically it's one board different, exactly one board different. And then we look at this, the total plot over here will change. The pin down, and now the migration path is going toward the thumb as well. So we're seeing a board or less total hook difference. Now you may go, well, what about the shape of the ball? What about the shape of the hook? Does that matter? And the shape of the ball is slightly different, right? When you look at the simulation, we'll look at the shape right in here, and then we'll go back and put 30, which is the pin up. We'll drill it, go back to the simulation, and watch right in here. Watch right in here. I'll hit this button like this, and you can see the shape slightly changes. And you have to keep this in perspective, because when you're looking at the lane is a lot longer than it is wider, and because of that, it can be tough to see some of these changes. And I think at the end of the day, what the simulation shows is that you've got to be a very, very high average bowler, you know, a 230 average type bowler who can really, really repeat shots to even begin to take some advantages of the pin up versus the pin down difference. I mean, a one board difference is an inch, and you can see an inch across 60 feet down the lane. That's requires some really, really high level of accuracy, especially when you're talking about house shot patterns. Anyway, we don't want to do that. We actually want to do a different bowling ball. Let's use a strong asymmetric bowling ball. So we're going to go to a track 919C, because the mass bias, the intermediate differential on this ball is 19, so it's very strong, and it doesn't have a flip block. So there's no flip block on this core, because some people say, well, it's the flip block that's the difference. So there's no flip block on this core. This is a typical strong mass bias ball. So we're going to go ahead and drill it at the 30 degrees, which is our pinup layout. You can kind of see the core is impacted here and here. We'll switch and do one at 75, just so you can see the difference. And we hit just a little bit of the core on this side, and we hit some more of the core over here. Okay, so we still hit the core. Matter of fact, let's keep it at this angle and put it back to 30. And you can see we're still hitting the core. So, nonetheless, let's go look at some of the simulated performance. At 30, we've got 15.7 degree, or 15.7 boards of total hook there. When we go back and we make this 75, which is now back to our pin down, that 15.7 number turns into 16.4. So still less than a board. This is actually slightly less than an inch, but you could call it an inch. So you can see it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter whether it's symmetrical, whether it's asymmetrical, whether it's got a flip block on it or not. We're not seeing much performance difference. Same thing here. This is the shot simulation for the pin down. We will do that same thing for the 30 degree pin up. Go back over to the shot simulation, watch the change. So bigger flare, the axis migration is going toward the fingers like all the other balls have been so far, and at the end of the day, the best part, or the thing that is most important here, I think, is that we're not seeing a ton of difference in the total hook. A slight change in the shape, not a lot of difference in the total hook, which is the exact same thing that happened in our simulation that we did, or actually in our bowling that we did with the ball. We'll do one more ball. And, you know, this is one of those things where the good thing about physics is that it doesn't care who's doing it. It is what it is. There is no you get to pick or we get to pick. I wanted to use the chalk because the chalk ball is back to that widow core, but incorrect. Incorrect on that. I did not want to use. I'm looking for another version of that widow core. There was a TMBA chalk, and that ball did have a different core shape in it. That was a stronger version of the widow. This happens to be the same as the widow. Okay, so what we will do then is, instead of that, let's do this. This will be a good comparison for you guys too. We're going to do two more comparisons. We're going to do Pursuit S, which happens to be a quote-unquote symmetrical ball. So we're going to go ahead and drill it with our 30-degree up. Go right to the simulation. Look for the simulation results here. 19.7, okay. And I'm going to leave this alone, except I'm going to change the bowling ball, and we're going to go to the Pursuit, because the Pursuit was actually an asymmetric version of the same shape. So watch this. So watch how the shape changes. This is the asymmetric version. It's flatter. You can see that there's two flat sides on the core, and that's the difference between Pursuit and Pursuit S. All right, so with this particular shape, the asymmetric version, the 19 point, in terms of 19.72. So you can see, like, in that particular case, when you use a similar shape and you drill it, oh, we didn't drill it though. There we go. There's got holes in it now. So 19.6, okay, with holes in it like that. And then make this back to 75. Drill it pin under, go over here. 20.4. So you can see the difference between the ball that is symmetric versus asymmetric as well. So at the end of the day, like I said, we're not seeing much difference in these balls. And the reason being is because the amount of mass that you're removing, it's not a lot overall, right? And that performance impact of that mass removal isn't extremely high either. So it doesn't matter whether you're using a symmetric ball, an asymmetric ball. It doesn't matter whether you're bowling on a shorter pattern, longer pattern. That was one too that was brought up. Well, what about a shorter pattern? What about a longer pattern? It's not that big a deal. It's just not. Doesn't mean that it's nothing. We're not saying that it has no impact, but it's definitely not as much of a big deal as maybe people tend to make it out to be. I'm gonna put the holes in this one too here, like so. So we're at, make sure that's right, 19.71 versus there's our pin down, so 19.71 versus 20.7. So same thing, like it doesn't matter. High diff, low diff, symmetric, asymmetric, you're not seeing that much difference in terms of total performance, which is what we're measuring, total hook. You may see a slight bit amount in shape. And if we were bowling on a house pattern, all of this would disappear. You wouldn't see any difference because the house pattern is going to make those balls a lot closer, and it's going to hide any difference you're going to be able to see there. So anyway, this is just a second video we wanted to put together to kind of go a little more into kind of the science behind pin up versus pin down, and what's actually happening, and where you're hitting the core, and how the axis point actually migrates as it goes down the lane, and what does all that mean. At the end of the day, what it means is you should probably pick a layout that you like, and you can stick to it and not worry so much about whether the pin is down or whether the pin is up. And if you're bowling on the PBA Tour, you know, when you're a PBA Tour player, This difference, could be helpful, right? Putting the pin up versus down could be helpful to give you that slight bit of change that you're looking for. But if you're not a professional bowler and you bowl typical leagues like most of us do, then probably just get your layout, pick it, and stick with it, and pick the right bowling ball. If you select the right bowling ball for your game, you're going to see a lot better difference in the performance, and you're going to see much more performance in your game. And if you've got bowling balls that you maybe don't like the way they are currently, look at changing the surface of those bowling balls. That's one of the benefits that we have with offering the True Cut sanding pads and the True Cut hand applied polish. It's an opportunity for you to be able to change the surface of your bowling ball to change your reaction. One little note here on the pin down balls. When you drill the balls pin down, you have a chance to bring this bow tie, which is what this is called right here. You can begin to bring it toward the finger holes, and as you get it closer to the finger holes, you have a chance of actually being able to hit it. Let me see if I can get that to happen really quick for you here. I don't know that that's going to happen, but we can try. So we brought it down a little bit more, go to the simulation, and voila, we hit the holes. That's one of the negatives of pin down balls. As you begin to bring that pin down, so this bow tie begins to come down, and that's what's causing you to hit holes. So in the scheme of things, symmetric or asymmetric, it's probably better to drill bowling balls that are pin up, because the pin up's going to have a lot less chance. Actually, it won't have a chance to be able to do that. As you begin to bring that pin up, this bow tie point is going to move back, just like so. So now it's way to the back, which is what you would prefer to have so you don't hit holes. Anyway, now you got some more insight into pin up versus pin down. Hopefully that was helpful. If you like it, maybe consider joining our channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, or maybe even joining our staff. We do a lot of this information like this for our staff. You can go to our website, ctdbowling.com, click the regional staff link, and consider joining and getting more information and education like this. We are an education company at Creating the Difference, and we're here to help you become the best bowler you can possibly be. With that being said, I'm out of here. CEO Ronald Hickman from Creating the Difference. Talk to you soon.